So I want you to imagine a frontline command post. We're deep into the night cycle of this highly contested world.
Right. A total war zone.
Exactly. And the perimeter is totally secured by heavy armor. You've got floodlights cutting through the gloom, motion trackers sweeping every conceivable angle.
A textbook defense.
Yeah, mathematically perfect. Sentries are posted at overlapping intervals, weapons drawn, eyes scanning the dark. But then the command box just crackles with static.
Just out of nowhere.
Right. And a fuel depot, like 3 miles away, quietly implodes. No massive fiery detonation, just a sudden violent structural collapse.
Which is terrifying because
Because before the alarm can even be sounded, the communications officer just slumps over his console. A micro-aperture punched cleanly through his reinforced helmet.
no muzzle flash.
No muzzle flash, no sound of a gunshot. So the commanding general opens his mouth to shout an order, but a shadow literally detaches itself from the ceiling of the bunker. A blade flashes, and the general is dead before he hits the floor.
And the shadow just melts back into the darkness.
Exactly. I mean, in the span of maybe 30 seconds, an entire military hierarchy is decapitated, the supply line is crippled, and the defenders are left staring into the dark, completely oblivious to the fact that they have already lost the war.
They are essentially fighting an army of ghosts at that point.
Yeah. Welcome to the Deep Dive, everyone. Today, we are exploring a force so lethal, they weaponize the darkness itself.
Because the psychological devastation of that exact scenario you just laid out, it's far more lethal than the actual physical casualties.
How so? Like, obviously losing your general is bad, but...
Right. But when a military force is dismantled without ever seeing the enemy's face, panic entirely replaces protocol. The survivors aren't fighting a tactical engagement anymore. They're fighting their own paranoia.
Oh, wow. Yeah, they start firing blindly into the shadows.
Exactly. They turn on each other. The unseen enemy doesn't just destroy the command structure. They turn the defender's own fear into the vanguard of the assault.
And that terrifying invisible army belongs to Craftworld Alaitoc. For those of you familiar with the broader universe, these are the Eldari draped in those iconic, like, dark blue and yellow camouflage patterns.
Quintessential Rangers.
Right. And you would look at their battlefield doctrine. You know, the absolute freedom of movement, the decentralized command, the sheer individual initiative required to pull off these ghost-like assassinations. And you would assume they come from a culture of absolute liberty.
You'd think they were a society of rogues and free spirits.
Exactly. But the reality is the exact opposite, which is the mission of our deep dive today. We're unpacking the massive paradox of a people defined by their strictness, who somehow produce the galaxy's most renowned wanderers.
Because they actually come from the single most rigid, suffocating, puritanical prison society in the entire galaxy.
It's wild. And to guide us through this, we're pulling heavily from today's source material, specifically excerpts from Shadows of Alaitoc, The Path of the Star Strider. This is going to walk us through the tragedy, the tactics, and really the ultimate horror of this unique culture.
And it really is a profound look at how trauma shapes a civilization. This isn't just a military history. It's about a people forced to fight a war on two fronts.
Right. One against the external horrors of the galaxy.
And another against the lingering shadow of their own damned legacy. Alaitoc operates under a paradox that really defies standard sociological models.
Because of how controlling it is.
Precisely. They have built an environment where every waking moment, every thought, every emotion is violently suppressed and heavily monitored.
It's an architecture of absolute psychological control.
It is. And yet the only reason this fortress of discipline hasn't collapsed under its own weight is because of the rebellious youth who look at that system, completely reject it, and flee into the stars.
Let's actually look at the mechanics of this prison first. Because calling it strict doesn't really even begin to cover it, does it?
Not at all. It's an all-encompassing way of life.
Right. They are governed by something called the path. Now, the Eldari as a species already used the path system. It's this mechanism of extreme hyperfocus.
Right. So if an individual decides to be a poet, for centuries, they do absolutely nothing but write poetry.
Yeah. Or they decide to be a warrior, and they do nothing but train with a sword. It's a way to compartmentalize their minds. But Alaitoc dials this concept up to just a suffocating extreme.
Their version of the path leaves zero room for deviation. Zero.
But why? Like, why are they so obsessed with the rules?
To understand the necessity of this extreme discipline, you really have to understand the biological and spiritual architecture of the Eldori mind.
Which is very different from a human mind.
Completely different. They do not experience the universe the way you do. Their nervous systems are hyper-attuned.
Right, so everything is just amplified.
Exactly. Where a human might feel a passing sadness, an Eldari feels a soul-crushing despair that could last a century.
Wow.
And where a human feels joy, an Eldari feels a transcendent ecstasy. That intensity is a biological reality for them.
And historically, that was a fatal flaw, wasn't it?
A literally apocalyptic one. Millions of years of unchecked, spiraling emotional intensity of hedonism, sadism, just seeking the next terrifying thrill. It literally coalesced in the psychic dimension of the warp.
Bringing about the fall.
Right. Their ancestors' complete lack of discipline birthed Slanesh, a dark god of excess that instantly consumed the souls of trillions of Eldari.
So the fall wasn't just like a political collapse.
No, it was a species-wide metaphysical apocalypse brought on by their own minds.
And that generational trauma is the engine of Alaitoc society. They are a culture defined entirely by the terror of repeating that mistake.
Yes, they are terrified of themselves.
It's basically a generational pressure cooker. Because that biological intensity hasn't gone away, right? They still feel everything dialed up to an 11.
Biology doesn't change just because you're scared.
Exactly. But Alaitoc's solution is to basically weld the lid of the pressure cooker shut. They implement this regime of relentless self-policing.
They don't just ban illicit activities, they ban the wandering of the mind itself.
Right. Like, if you aren't actively focusing on the strict parameters of your chosen path, you are fundamentally endangering the survival of the species.
And the seer councils who govern Alaitoc, they view this not as tyranny, but as triage.
That's a great way to put it, triage.
Because they are operating in a universe where the god that their ancestors created is actively waiting to consume their souls the moment they die, or even the moment they slip into emotional excess.
So the harshness is just a mathematical equation to them. Suppress the individual to preserve the soul of the species.
Exactly. Any deviation is a microfracture in the dam, holding back a psychic ocean of eternal torment.
Okay, but I look at their society, and I see a system that is fundamentally cannibalizing itself.
How do you mean?
Well, consider the Exarchs. Based on the path of the Star Strider, an Exarch is an Eldari who walks the path of the warrior, but they go too far. They become trapped.
Right, they lose the ability to step off the path and become a civilian again.
Yet they are permanently fused, often literally, with their war plate. Their individual personality is entirely overwritten by the composite souls of every warrior who wore that armor before them.
They become weapons with a pulse.
Exactly. And Alaitoc produces an unusually massive number of Exarchs. Like, way more than other Craftworlds.
They do.
So to me, that isn't a sign of discipline. That is a glaring symptom of a failing system. If you build a society entirely designed to prevent people from falling into obsession, and your society produces the highest rate of citizens who become completely irreversibly obsessed, I mean, your cure has basically become the disease.
That's an interesting perspective, but framing it as a failure assumes the primary goal is the psychological well-being of the individual.
Look, it's not.
For the leadership of Alaitoc, the production of Exarchs is a horrific but acceptable collateral cost.
Wait, really? They just accept it?
Well, think about your pressure cooker analogy. When you weld the lid shut, the energy doesn't just disappear, it finds the path of least resistance.
Okay.
In Alaitoc, the society demands absolute perfection in discipline. So the citizens pour all of their intense, biologically hardwired emotional energy into following the rules.
Oh, I see. They become so terrified of the chaos of freedom that they fetishize the structure.
Precisely. The Exarchs are the ultimate manifestation of this. They haven't fallen to the chaotic obsession of Slanesh. They have fallen to the cold, rigid obsession of Cain, their god of war.
So it's the lesser of two evils.
From a cold, strategic standpoint, yes. An Exarch is a powerful asset to the Craftworld's defense. It's a tragedy, certainly. But a soul lost to discipline is still a soul denied to Slanesh.
But you can't build an entire civilization entirely out of martyrs and zealots. I mean, the pressure is just too immense.
No, it's not sustainable for a whole population.
Right. If every single citizen either became a repressed Puritan or a psychotic, blood-obsessed Exarch, the society would shatter from the internal tension.
Which leads us directly to the pressure valve.
Yes, because a massive portion of the population, specifically the youth, look at this suffocating, welded-shut existence, and make a completely different choice.
They choose to walk away.
A path of the outcast.
Exactly. Now, this is an official, recognized mechanism within Eldari society in general, but on Alaitoc, it takes on a monumental scale.
Like a mass exodus.
Pretty much. Young Eldari, overflowing with that innate emotional intensity and curiosity we talked about, they simply cannot compress themselves into the mold Alaitoc demands.
It would break them.
Right. So rather than staying and fomenting rebellion or staying and suffering a psychotic break, they leave the craft world entirely.
They become rangers.
Yes. They wander the vast hostile galaxy, completely unburdened by the immediate supervision of the Seer Councils.
The mechanics of this exodus are just wild to think about. Like, we talk about brain drain in human sociology.
Yeah.
When the youngest, brightest, most dynamic members of a society leave for better opportunities elsewhere.
And it usually dooms the culture they left behind.
Exactly, because they take the innovation and the energy with them. But Alaitoc experiences a deliberate mass exodus of its youth.
Continually.
Yeah, and you would expect them to become pariahs. You would expect the Puritans back home to strike their names from the records, to view them as weak failures who couldn't handle the mental discipline required to hold back the dark god.
Well, the tension between the Puritans and the outcasts is palpable, certainly, but it operates on a foundation of silent complicity.
Silent complicity. How so?
The deeply entrenched elders, those walking the paths of leadership or artisanship, they undoubtedly view the Rangers with a mixture of pity and terror.
Because the kids are flirting with the very freedom that caused the fall.
Exactly. They are walking a razor's edge. However, the Seer Council, which is the overarching strategic mind of Alaitoc, they understand the grim necessity of this dynamic.
They know they need the valve to release the steam.
Yes. If those youths were forced to remain, their suppressed emotional turbulence would spark a civil war. By allowing the exodus, the craft world expels its internal volatility.
And the irony is, by leaving, these rebellious kids become the most vital organ of the society they just rejected.
They don't just disappear into the void.
No, they become the eyes and ears of Alaitoc.
Yeah.
I mean, if you think about it, a craft world is essentially a massive, continent-sized generation ship floating through the void.
It is entirely blind and insular by nature.
Right. So the Rangers scatter across the galaxy. They're wandering through human-highest cities, navigating treacherous asteroid fields, observing the movements of Orkwas and Imperial fleets,
They become a decentralized intelligence network,
gathering real-time data on the shifting tectonic plates of galactic power.
which provides an essential strategic buffer. Because without the Rangers, Alaitoc would only know about an incoming threat when it appeared on their immediate sensors.
Which is way too late.
Far too late. The outcasts give the Seer Council decades of advance warning, but more profoundly than that, they maintain their loyalty.
Which is the craziest part to me.
Despite rejecting the oppressive laws of their home, their psychic tether to their kin remains intact.
Yeah, when the Seer Council sounds the call to war, these wanderers traverse thousands of light years to defend the very prison they escaped from.
Just think about the psychological burden of that return.
Oh man, it must be brutal. You've spent centuries exploring the infinite variety of the cosmos. You've tasted absolute freedom.
And then the call comes.
And you return to a society where smiling too broadly might be seen as a dangerous lack of discipline.
You subject yourself to the judgment of elders who despise your lifestyle.
Also, you can bleed for them. It's just a staggering display of cultural loyalty. And they don't just bring intelligence back with them, do they?
They bring a completely different paradigm of warfare.
Because survival in the wider galaxy is not a theoretical exercise.
Not at all. These Eldari youth step out of a highly controlled, sterile environment and into an arena governed by apex predators.
The galaxy is basically a brutal Darwinian forge.
Exactly. To survive as a lone wanderer out there, you must master the art of being invisible. You must learn to track, to hunt, and to kill without ever exposing yourself to retaliation.
And the ones who survive this gap year in hell, they don't just become scouts. They become the most terrifying guerrilla fighters in existence.
Which brings us back to the invisible army we talked about at the beginning.
Yes. Alaitoc leans into this resource heavily. The source text notes that they field more sniper rangers, which are known within their ranks as Star Striders, than any other craft world.
But the true terror, the absolute masters of this doctrine, are a specialized vanguard known as the Pathfinders.
Right, the Pathfinders. Let's get into them.
The Pathfinders represent the ultimate refinement of the outcast philosophy, weaponized for conventional warfare.
They are no longer just surviving. They are actively dismantling enemy infrastructure.
Their methodology completely subverts the traditional concept of a battlefield.
Let's talk about that methodology, because we really need to expand on the metaphor of the invisible illness from earlier.
It's a very apt analogy.
Yeah, because fighting a traditional army like the Imperial Guard or an Orc Horde, it's like fighting a physical trauma.
It's a blunt force impact.
Right, you see the fist coming, you brace for it, and you trade blows. But fighting Alaitoc's Pathfinders is like battling a highly aggressive systemic virus.
There's no initial impact.
None. The first phase of the war is entirely asymptomatic to the commanding officers. The Pathfinders infiltrate the theater of war weeks, sometimes months, before the main Eldari war host even enters the system.
And they bypass the outer perimeter defenses not by overwhelming them, but by rendering themselves practically non-existent.
The stealth technology is just insane.
A Pathfinder's war gear is a marvel of stealth tech. They utilize chameleon cloaks, which are woven from specialized photoreactive fibers.
And these cloaks don't just, like, dye themselves to match the environment, right?
No, they actively absorb and bend ambient light. They mask thermal signatures, and they can even confuse auspex scanners.
So a Pathfinder could literally lie motionless in an open field, and an armored column could drive right past them.
Completely unaware.
And the weapons they carry, the Ranger long rifles, I mean, they are a nightmare of applied mechanics.
Contrast it with a human sniper. A human sniper fires a solid slug propelled by chemical explosives.
Right, it's loud, it leaves a thermal trail, and it relies on raw kinetic force.
But the Eldari long rifle is a needle weapon. It fires hyperdense, molecularly sharp slivers of crystallized toxin.
And the mechanism is almost entirely silent.
But the real terror isn't the ammunition, it's the optics.
The warp sight.
Exactly. They aren't just using glass lenses to magnify a target. Eldari biology, combined with the psychoplastics of the rifle, allows the sniper to tap into a micro level of psychic foresight.
Which means they aren't just looking at the physical coordinates of the target.
No, they're looking at the probable immediate futures of the target.
They see where the target is going to be a fraction of a second before the target even decides to move.
This allows a Pathfinder to place a needle round through the only weak point in a heavily armored helmet from 3 miles away in a crosswind with absolute terrifying consistency.
So going back to the virus analogy, the viral infection spreads. The Pathfinder starts systematically dismantling the vital organs of the enemy force.
They aren't wasting time shooting rank-and-file infantrymen.
No. They're destroying generatoriums to kill the power grid. They are quietly opening plasma valves so that when the enemy tries to start their tanks, the engines melt down.
They are putting those needle rounds through the skulls of logistics officers, communication technicians, and artillery spotters.
So by the time the main Eldari army actually arrives, the enemy is completely hollowed out.
The white blood cells of the defending army, the patrols, the heavy armor, they have spent weeks rushing to emergencies they can't see.
Exhausting themselves against phantoms.
And this doctrine minimizes Eldari casualties to near zero, which is the ultimate strategic imperative for a dying race.
Because they just do not have the population to fight a war of attrition.
Every Eldari life lost is an irrecoverable tragedy. The Pathfinders ensure that the enemy is functionally defeated, demoralized, and physically crippled before the first actual clash of infantry ever occurs.
So that dark blue and yellow camouflage of Alaitoc is practically a psychological weapon.
It signifies the shadows coming to claim you.
But, okay, operating a massive decentralized network of deep cover operatives across a galaxy filled with horrors, that carries an enormous mathematical risk.
You can't be everywhere without getting caught eventually.
Right. You can be the greatest sniper in the universe, wielding a rifle that literally sees the future, but if you are constantly wandering through human hive cities and alien ruins, eventually someone is going to catch you.
Your luck will run out.
And for the outcasts of Alaitoc, their luck usually runs out in the absolute worst possible place. The interrogation chambers of the Imperial Inquisition.
Which is a horrifying fate. The Imperium of Man is driven by a xenophobic paranoia that makes Alaitoc's Puritanism look mild.
Yeah, to the Inquisition, a captured Eldari Ranger is not a prisoner of war.
They are a biological hard drive full of heretical intelligence. The Inquisition is desperate to understand the webway.
That's the labyrinthine network of alternate dimensions the Eldari use to travel faster than light, right?
Exactly. And the Inquisition doesn't ask politely.
I can imagine.
The torture these captured youths endure is well beyond physical pain. It is a systematic spiritual dismantling. They break the Rangers.
And this creates an unresolvable diplomatic nightmare. I mean, Alaitoc might cast these youths out, the Puritans might view them as failures, but they are still kin.
They are still Eldari souls.
Right. When the Inquisition tortures an Eldari soul, it is an act of cosmic desecration that the craft world simply cannot ignore.
Which guarantees a state of perpetual grinding warfare between Alaitoc and the Imperium.
And it forces two completely incompatible military doctrines into direct conflict.
Because the Imperium's response to the elusive shadow warfare of Alaitoc is to simply increase the density of the violence.
They operate on a doctrine of overwhelming blunt force attrition,
If they cannot find the sniper in the forest, they will simply burn down the entire forest.
along with the surrounding continent. And we see the ultimate culmination of this in a specific massive escalation detailed in the source text. The Imperium actually managed to track the Rangers back to their source.
They found Alaitoc?
Yes. And they launched a direct invasion of Craftworld Alaitoc itself.
And they didn't send a specialized strike team?
No. They sent a sledgehammer. They brought deep space naval armadas, regiments of Imperial Guard numbering in the millions, heavy mechanized divisions, and the post-human shock troops of the Space Marines.
They brought the apocalyptic industrial might of humanity to crush this floating continent.
But the Imperial commanders recorded their experience of this invasion, and the recurring theme is just this profound, maddening frustration.
Because they marched an army designed to break fortifications into an environment that fundamentally refused to be broken.
They described it as hunting ghosts in a haunted labyrinth.
Let's break down the mechanics of the Craftworld's defense, because it is brilliant. A Craftworld isn't made of steel and concrete.
Right. It is grown.
The entire structure, from the grand spires down to the floor panels, is made of a psychoreactive material called wraithbone.
It's basically a living psychic skeleton.
Yes. So the Imperials marched into the corridors of Alaitoc expecting urban warfare. They set up choke points, established perimeters.
But the environment itself was hostile.
Exactly. Eldari engineers known as bone singers, they do not use welding torches, they use psychic resonance.
They literally play the architecture like an instrument.
During the invasion, bone singers actively reshaped the battlefield in real time. An Imperial armored column would secure a vital transit artery, only to watch the walls organically constrict and seal the corridor shut behind them.
Bulkheads didn't just drop. The floor would liquefy and reshape into barricades, isolating the invaders into easily eradicated pockets. Just imagine being an Imperial Space Marine in that situation. You are wearing a ton of ceramite armor, carrying a gun that fires rocket-propelled grenades. You are the apex of human bioengineering.
You're ready to conquer.
You stomp down a beautiful, glowing white corridor, and suddenly the corridor narrows. The ceiling begins to descend.
The walls soften into a resin-like substance that just absorbs your gunfire.
You aren't defeated by enemy fire. You are slowly, methodically digested by the architecture. The Eldari turned their own city into a carnivorous trap.
And the Rangers and Pathfinders, who had returned by the thousands to defend their home, used this shifting labyrinth to their ultimate advantage.
Right, they're firing needle rounds through microscopic apertures in the shifting wraithbone, striking Imperial commanders who completely believed they were behind impenetrable cover.
The Imperium's reliance on rigid hierarchical command structures became a fatal liability here. Without their officers, the millions of Imperial guardsmen dissolved into a panicked, trapped mob.
This is where I have to question the absolute sheer stupidity of the Imperial doctrine.
In what sense?
Well, if your own commanders are filing reports saying the enemy is invisible, the architecture is alive, and the environment is a fluid trap, why do you keep pouring slow, heavy, loud infantry into the meat grinder?
Because that assumes the Imperium values those lives.
Right, and they don't.
Fundamentally, they do not. You see, the Imperium is also a society built on trauma, but where Alaitoc responds with hyper-discipline and evasion, the Imperium responds with brute force and absolute intolerance.
Subtlety requires adaptation.
And adaptation requires questioning the established doctrine, which, in the Imperium, is heresy. The Imperial war machine only has one gear. Even when they realize the hammer is ineffective against the fog, their only authorized response is to swing the hammer harder.
And the toll of that stubbornness was apocalyptic. The records indicate that after a grueling, agonizingly bloody struggle, the Imperial invasion force was finally expelled.
The sledgehammer was bled dry and thrown out the airlock.
Alaitoc survived. But survival isn't victory. The blood of the Eldari was still spilled. The psychic shockwave of those lost lives reverberated through the craft world.
It was a horrific cost.
You would think, after surviving an invasion of that scale, Alaitoc would dedicate every waking moment to dismantling the Imperial Inquisition.
A lesser intelligence agency would, but the Seer Council operates on a timescale of millennia.
Their far-seeing eyes look past the immediate visceral threat of the human meat grinder.
Because the Imperium is a violent, sprawling mess, but it is ultimately chaotic and mortal. The Seers peered into the shifting currents of the future and saw a far more profound existential silence rising in the dark.
They saw the rise of a figure named Imhotep the Stormlord.
The Necrons.
Yes. And this wasn't just a new player on the galactic board. The Seers recognized his awakening as the literal fulfillment of an ancient text known as the Prophecy of Doom.
And because of this singular vision, Alaitoc pivoted their entire civilization's military focus.
The endless war with the Imperium was basically downgraded to a border skirmish. The true enemy, the ultimate threat to the survival of the galaxy, were the Necrons.
And the Necrons are the perfect metaphysical counter to the Eldari.
How so? Like, complete opposites.
Exactly. If the Eldari are defined by overwhelming emotion, psychic resonance, and fragile biology, the Necrons are defined by absolute, undying, cold logic.
Because millions of years ago, the Necrons traded their flesh and their souls to become immortal machines made of living metal.
Right. They sleep in massive underground tomb complexes across the galaxy. They do not feel joy, they do not feel fear, and they have absolutely no connection to the psychic dimension of the warp.
They are the antithesis of life.
To a highly psychic, deeply emotional species like the Eldari, the Necrons don't just represent death. They represent an eternity of static, soulless silence.
And you can't fight a defensive war against an enemy that never sleeps and never stops. If you wait for the tombs to fully awaken, you have already lost.
Alaitoc understood this perfectly.
So they orchestrated one of the greatest intelligence coups in galactic history. They managed to acquire an ancient, crystalline map detailing the location of every single Necron tomb world in existence.
The strategic value of that map is just incalculable. It allowed Alaitoc to transition from reactive survival to proactive extermination.
They didn't wait for the Imperium or other species to realize the danger.
No, they used their vast, decentralized network of rangers, pathfinders, and indigenous Eldari known as Exodites to coordinate a galaxy-spanning campaign.
They took the war directly to the crypts.
And this campaign forced Alaitoc to demonstrate a level of tactical pragmatism that completely shatters the illusion of their rigid puritanism.
Oh, absolutely. The war against the Necrons led their forces into a region of space known as the Pariah Nexus.
Now, we have to explain the mechanics of the Pariah Nexus because it is the stuff of absolute nightmares for an Eldari.
The Necrons have constructed massive pylons in this region, designed to entirely suppress and sever the connection to the warp.
Consider what that actually means for them.
Right.
The Eldari are biologically reliant on the warp. Their technology is psychic, their weapons are guided by psychic foresight, their communication is telepathic.
So entering the Pariah Nexus isn't just like losing your radio signal.
It is a profound physical mutilation. Entering that space feels like a heavy, suffocating gray blanket being thrown over their souls.
It induces severe physical nausea, psychic blindness, and a profound echoing depression.
A human entering a sensory deprivation tank experiences a mild version of what an Eldari feels entering the Pariah Nexus. It should completely cripple them.
It should render their armies utterly inert.
But they don't retreat.
No. They look at a battlefield that completely neutralizes the fundamental superpower of their species, and they adapt instantly.
The Seer Council recalls the traditional forces, the heavily psychic warlocks, the wraithbone constructs that require a psychic tether. They pull them all out.
And who do they send in? They pivot the entire doctrine to rely almost exclusively on the Rangers and the Pathfinders.
It is the ultimate validation of the outcasts.
Yes.
When the magic fails, when the metaphysical architecture of their species is rendered null and void, the survival of the craft world falls entirely on the mundane, hard-learned, physical survival skills of the youth they drove away.
Because the Rangers don't need psychic foresight to pull a trigger.
Exactly. A chameleon cloak bends light physically, not psychically. They strip the war down to pure, unadulterated kinetic geometry.
But how do you kill an immortal skeleton made of living metal with a sniper rifle? Like, the Necrons possess reanimation protocols.
Right, you blow an arm off and the metal flows like mercury to reattach it.
So a standard infantryman shooting a laser rifle at a Necron is just wasting energy.
But the Pathfinders aren't standard infantry. They use their intense, hyper-focused marksmanship to bypass the reanimation entirely.
They don't aim for center mass.
No. They aim for the microscopic command nodes within the mechanical skull. They sever the subroutines, they dismantle the Necron phalanxes with mechanical precision.
And this campaign demands cultural compromises that are truly staggering. Alaitoc realizes they cannot fight this galaxy-wide extermination campaign alone.
Their intense, burning hatred of the Necrons leads them to form an incredibly unlikely alliance.
With a faction known as the Harlequins, specifically the Mask of the Frozen Stars.
This alliance is conceptually hilarious, but also incredibly revealing.
You have to picture this. On one side, you have the forces of Alaitoc. They are dour, puritanical, hyper-disciplined warriors dressed in dark, muted camouflage, operating in complete silence, constantly terrified of expressing any emotion.
Very stoic.
Very stoic. On the other side, you have the Harlequins. They are chaotic, theatrical murder clowns.
Quite literally.
They dress in blindingly bright, clashing colors. They laugh maniacally while they fight. They perform acrobatic death dances on the battlefield.
They are the absolute embodiment of the wild, untethered Eldari spirit that Alaitoc spends every waking second trying to suppress.
The ideological friction between those two groups standing in a briefing room together must be immense.
Oh, the Puritans of Alaitoc must look at the Harlequins with a mixture of profound disgust and deep suppressed envy.
Because the Harlequins represent the exact emotional excess that Alaitoc fears will cause a second fall.
Yet, the Seer Council authorizes the alliance.
Why? Because they both hate the Necrons more than they hate each other.
Right. And the Harlequins are completely immune to the taint of Slaanesh, protecting their souls through devotion to their own laughing god.
They share Alaitoc's understanding that the Necrons are the ultimate threat to life.
So the dour snipers provide the overwatch, and the laughing acrobats provide the frontline slaughter.
It just proves that beneath the rigid, unyielding facade of Alaitoc's Puritanism lies a core of absolute, ruthless pragmatism.
They will bend every rule, ally with their ideological opposites, and send their rejected children into anti-magic death zones, all to ensure the survival of the species.
And that is the complete arc of Craftworld Alaitoc. They are a society built on the trauma of the past, attempting to engineer a sterile future.
They construct an agonizing prison of discipline to cage the intense, chaotic beauty of their own nature.
But the prison cannot hold everyone. The youth flee into the dark. They are hardened by a universe that wants to eat them.
They become the ultimate unseen knife in the shadows,
bleeding out the sledgehammer invasions of the Imperium and dismantling the undying legions of the Necrons in the silent, suffocating voids of space.
The ultimate horror of Alaitoc is that their existence is an eternal, cold equation.
Right.
They are fighting external horrors with unmatched brilliance, but their primary war is internal. Every law they pass, every stricture they enforce, and every child they drive away into the cold vacuum of space is a sacrifice made to combat the lingering shadow of their own history.
It is a cycle of repression and salvation that just keeps turning. You build the ultimate fortress and you realize the only thing keeping the walls from crumbling are the people who refuse to live inside them.
It's a fascinating paradox.
Which leaves you, the listener, with a final fascinating question to consider the next time you think about those blue and yellow snipers fading into the darkness. If a society's survival relies completely, undeniably, on the very people who reject its laws, whose philosophy is actually keeping them alive?
Are the Puritans saving Alaitoc by holding the structure together?
Or are the rebellious outcasts saving the Puritans from slowly choking to death on their own rules?